parents have to stop feeling bad limiting their kids. You're helping them deal with life. That's our job, is to help them to get good at life, dealing with their emotions, doing stuff they don't want to do, aka chores or homework or whatever the case may be. But that's a part of life, is learning the discipline to do things you don't want to do, because you should, if you're well adjusted, you should be doing them out of your own free will, but also because you see the value. And a parent's job is to create the framework to allow kids to do things they don't necessarily want to do, but help them understand that it's valuable and get them to eventually take ownership over it.
Hello everybody, welcome back to School of Love, where we want to help you and your kids have great conversations where you can talk about anything, especially about sex. And today I'm here with Andrew, and our topic is navigating screen time. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, random stranger.
Don't talk to strangers, people. But we aren't completely strangers, so we're going to have this conversation. And I thought it'd be interesting, Andrew, to start with like a sort of timeline, because I'm assuming you, like me, went through an evolution of how screen time developed in your family. Maybe. That's how it was for us. Or were you perfect always?
No, I just deprived my kids of screens in the early days because I just figured they don't need it. And then little by little, I think we just let them play games, because I realized that games are actually quite good. I mean, they've found that many video games actually help with hand-eye coordination. Doctors, allegedly, surgeons in particular, use video games as a way to exercise their hand-eye coordination. So not all bad, just clearly very addictive, right? So I've found that deprivation from an early age is fantastic. Kids do not need screens whatsoever in their early years. They're so easily addicted. And it's not a bad thing to completely deprive them, because they don't know what they're missing. It's the same with sugar. It's like, not evil, but if they don't ever eat like a chocolate bar until they're 10, it's not a bad thing per se, right? It's if they then discover it and then they become like totally addicted because they said, what have you been keeping from me, right? If you shelter them and have a weird energy around it, then yeah, they'll likely rebel against you at some point. But for us, it was just like, let's just, why give them a phone, or why give them an iPad, or, you know? I was in Target the other day. As soon as this kid got there, his dad put him in the cart, the shopping cart, and gave him an iPad, and then they just ignored each other for the entire experience. I was like, oh my God, I miss those days when my kids could fit into those things. So we just have so much fun, you know? Because then conversely, I saw a mom who had one kid in the shopping cart, like she was buying her kid, and then another kid in the top part of the shopping cart. And the kid was asking about, like, which way do we go? And she said, right, turn right. And she's like, which way's right? And she said, you write with your right hand. And they're just having this great conversation about left and right and stuff that you would totally miss if the kid was zoned out, and if the parent was zoned out, right? So for our kids, I mean, specifically with them, we didn't introduce them to screens until much later. But because, and you'll know this, because that works for the eldest kid, it's not the same with the youngest kid, because the youngest kid is young when the oldest kid is old. The younger kid got exposed to it earlier, for sure, but it was like, it started like this. You can play a video game for 1 hour, you know? And really simple games, and it's together in a common area. So they associate not being alone, and that it's for this window of time. That's how we introduced it. Yeah.
Okay. All together, all the kids were.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, actually with our little guy, we do when he was doing nap time. This is funny because we were in Bali at the time. It was during COVID. We were kind of stuck in Bali, and so we would go out when our little guy was still napping, we would play video games, but we would use code words for everything. But he eventually figured out what we were talking about, so we'd have to use different code words. Um, but yeah, the little guys started later because especially between 1 and 3, they become unbelievably addicted so easily. They see shiny phones and they just like, I need that. I need that. And so I was really aware of that. So yeah, no, in terms of devices, screens, if you include like movies or whatever, then we would watch movies on Friday night, Saturday night, and then no TV during the week. So we'd associate with having fun together as a family, watching movies together. And in terms of little screens, it was like 1 hour a week, Saturdays, you can play video games. Hard stop. That was in the
Cool.
beginning. Yeah.
Mm.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like so I feel like if I could rewind, I would do a lot of things differently.
Okay.
So we went through a lot of different I don't know, shapes and forms of screen use over the years. Our oldest is now 12 and a half. So yeah, starting 12 years ago, I didn't even actually have a phone in the beginning. So I never really, yeah, stuck a phone in my kids' hands.
Mm.
We unfortunately sometimes were the kind of parents, yeah, who had like, I don't know, morning service is happening or we're listening to like a service for Hundoke or something. And then sometimes we'd be eating breakfast at the same time and we're like, oh, like our little daughter, she really seems interested in it.
Mm.
And she's like eating better because she's so distracted. And
Yeah.
so sometimes we thought, okay, if she's eating better, why not just do this more often? And so like we did show little short videos sometimes
Mm.
in the beginning, and um, that happened here and now and then. And then I have my second daughter came quite quickly, and because my husband and I are quite on our own and don't have a babysitter, um, I have to say I also used screens like little children's shows also to babysit my kids basically for me
Mm.
while I was cooking. Um, and then, I had my third child and I also, uh, yeah, I also did things like sometimes using the phone when we're going to take a nap and watching something which is like semi interesting and semi boring, like a
Mm.
documentary on whales, for with my son, um, just yeah, to finally lull him to sleep.
Mm.
Um, and then so this was all like yeah, watching different kinds of shows basically.
Mm.
That was not even games yet. And then games entered our lives. And then I realized, okay, with this, I want to be stricter. And I don't know exactly when it was, but at some point at the doctor's, at some checkup, they said, yeah, please keep screen time to just 30 minutes a day for your kid max.
Mm.
Don't go over 40. And so this kind of woke me up. And I mean, there were also many things that happened before then when I realized, actually, I really, this, this kind of using a device to distract my kids, so that they're eating or whatever, this is actually, or so that I can talk to someone, that's not going to help them. And it's not helping me. And I mean, looking back, of course, I see like Amelia, the kids, they could have been cooking with me instead of showing them something, or with my showing them something while putting them to bed. I should have actually read as many storybooks as I could.
Mm.
If they really had to sleep, or so yeah, I do regret those things, and I just want to be like fully transparent because I think a lot of parents have done the same.
Sure.
And yeah, I just want to say, I totally get it, you know, like the stress and feeling alone, like, oh, I have no babysitter, or, you know, maybe just wanting to be able to get through the store without stress. But there is also another way. I mean, it takes a lot of patience, but like you
Hmm.
were describing, you do miss out on so much more, like so much, so many precious conversations
Hmm.
when, yeah, we miss out when we use devices. And so, yeah, I became stricter with time limits, with,
Hmm.
you know, using any kind of app. And yeah, and then also with watching shows. And shows also, I turned it into any kind of show. If we watch it, it has to be educational. And yeah, not much longer than 20 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so basically, um, we always have to have timers. Like I try to make that clear with my kids now. When we're doing the app, it our brain just won't keep track of time, and so we always have a timer that's gonna ring.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. It's so I mean, what you're bringing up is interesting because in the world of high noon, we know clearly that people use their phone to numb themselves. That's what addiction is. It's a numbing agent. It's like I feel uncomfortable and I want to not feel uncomfortable. So I want this feeling of discomfort to go away. So I'll use my phone, right? But in many parents' cases, it's the discomfort is coming from their kids being uncomfortable. So they numb their kids. So in
Mm.
fact, you're like, your addiction in that situation is being addicted to making your kids addicted so that you don't have to deal with the discomfort of being with your kids, right? And this is something that we all do. And it's like, but it is a drug. And I haven't thought about it through that lens, really, because it is such a drug for kids. And if you think about, your kid experiencing some sort of discomfort by being bored, that they can't sit in a shopping cart or they can't just sit somewhere without being entertained. You're training them to not be able to just sit with themselves. And a big issue is that many of us don't know how to deal with it ourselves. We don't have boundaries for our phones. So we have no idea how to give boundaries to our kids for their phones. And that is something really, really important for sure. I mean, it's unequivocal. There's no scientific data that has ever shown anything remotely close to a lot of screen time is fantastic for kids. There's nothing that hints towards that, right? It's always detrimental. And obviously so like at this stage in our parenting, our kids all homeschool and they use devices throughout the day. But the idea of intentionality with technology is no longer kind of optional because otherwise technology is so good at just stealing so much of your time. That's its primary job is this flashy object that is like, oh, look at that. And then you get lost and then you've just squandered hours of your time or energy. Like even you just go in for a brief bout, so many people there's a joke I saw a meme about this, just like that you're a monster if you don't take your phone into the bathroom while you poop these days. It's like, of course everybody does it. Who doesn't, right? Um, but imagine that even that seems innocuous. Okay, I'll just yeah. What else am I going to do during these minutes while I'm on the bathroom or on the toilet? But even that is like so easily now you're probably on Instagram or probably on YouTube or one of these main ones, and you leave feeling a little bit worse about yourself, a little bit more like you're not good enough. Like it just takes and it takes and it takes, unless you're very intentional. Because truth be told, I've been on this tear. Today's Thursday here in America. Last night, I cooked my world famous sweet potato brownies, which I've been on this tear
Wow.
of every Wednesday. We do baking and board games. And I've been baking a lot of different things that I learn on Instagram. Because when I go
Mm-hmm.
in there, I go into the search feature and I find I've been making pizza where the dough is actually made out of turkey because Instagram, right? Like there's all the, it's so good. It's so good. Um, but there's good stuff in there. Again, intentionality.
Yeah,
If I
true.
go in and get out and I get a recipe out of the deal, out of the transaction, fantastic. Then it lifts you up. But it starts with us. It really does start with us because I want my kids too to have a really solid relationship with screens at this point. In the beginning, it's just kind of isolate them as much as possible and be very skimpy with my allowance of screens in their life so that they can function totally fine without screens. Screens are just like a bonus. Now it's like, how do you build a healthy rapport so that throughout the day you're interacting with screens, but it's totally on your terms. You have something specific that you're doing, and then you get out, and then you get back to reality. That's a game that we all have to deal with, right? Like I'm talking to you right now on a screen, right? This is part of our work, and it's part of how we communicate. But now after this, got to close it up, like go back to reality. So we have to model what we want our kids to experience. And that's a big issue that actually a lot of parents deal with, is that they have a very dysfunctional relationship with screen time themselves. So they have no idea how to manage their kids' screen time. Right? Because
Yeah,
if you're
that's
like, hey,
yeah,
you can't watch YouTube anymore. Well, that applies for everybody in the house. Why just them? Right?
sure. Yeah, that's something I wanted to dig into with you a little bit because that, like you said, a lot of adults struggle with that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us are aware of it too. And the question is, when will we be almost perfect at controlling our own screen time as adults,
Mm.
right? Um, and so, do you think it's important that we model screen use,
Yeah,
productive screen use, let's say, because, like you said, if we are intentional, and a lot of people have to use screens to work as well, if we're intentional with it, yeah, do we have to be 100% good models for our kids? You know,
absolutely.
because absolutely. But I think a lot of us, do fall for that one little
Sure.
Instagram thing that just looked really interesting and we know it's not so important.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I don't know, like
To be
we,
perfectly imperfect. Like there is no
yeah,
such, you have to always throw out the idea that perfection is even a possibility for anybody. It's nonsense. There's not a single person is perfect in any realm of life. Everybody's a work in progress. So if you can talk to your kids about your own struggles, that makes you more relatable. That's the whole thing about talking about sex too, and talking about anything deep with your kids is like, yeah, you would want to maintain. I was having this conversation a few hours ago with one of our staff, is that the best energy possible is I have standards that I'm working towards, but I'm a work in progress. Because when you're just a work in progress, then you have no answers. And if you just have these high standards, then you're unrelatable. So the mixture of like, I am working on these high standards and I've been doing pretty well, but I also have difficult moments, makes you both kind of ahead of them and useful to them because you can help them get better. But it also makes you relatable because you're not perfect. And again, nobody's perfect. So, yeah, first of all, throw the idea of perfection out the window. But the whole thing is technology and us, screens and us, the internet and us, it's a relationship. And relationships, whether it's metaphysical in nature or whether it's physical, like an actual person, it's all the same. You have to define what you want out of the relationship. And when it's just so casual, you will understand that everybody in that relationship has different expectations. So you're bound to end in ruin, right? You're just going to fight a lot because you have different expectations. But when you're in a relationship with somebody, even, I had this guy that I was in front of a bunch of people with, and I was like, hey guys, this is my best friend. And he was like, whoa, I don't know if you're my best friend. I was like, oh my God, I probably should have talked to you about this first. I have a totally different expectation from this relationship. And so I scaled back my expectations from him ever since, because now he's not so great at communicating. So every once in a while, I realize, oh, that's just who he is. So I don't want to expect that he's going to be more than what he can be, right? And it's the same with the internet. Is like, what do you want out of this relationship? Just
Mhm.
entertainment, knowledge, money? Do you want to make money? And what percentage? And then you help your kids create their own cocktail of using the according to that. So again, now we have 2 hours. We have a like a system. They have every day a habit tracker, right? And these are things that they're committed to doing every single day. And every night they all meet up and they check the boxes. It's a paper. I made sure that it wasn't technology. It's a piece of paper with pencils, right?
Yeah.
And then they also have their daily schedule. If they do all of their habits and then they follow their schedule, then they get 2 hours of video games on Saturday. And then when they're doing sports, then I also give them an extra 5 minutes for every goal that they score, if it's basketball or soccer. And
Hmm.
I was doing that because I was incentivizing different behavior because they were too shy to take shots in sports. They were always just like panicking and passing. I was like, bro, if you guys score, I'll give you 5 points for every goal. All of a sudden, they were scoring all the time. It's an unbelievable experiment. But I capped that because the first time there was no cap, so they added 2 hours. So then they were playing video games for 4 hours. I was like, this is terrible. So then I made it so like, okay, there's a cap on this of an extra hour, which max 3 hours on Saturday in a public space together. So it's a bonding experience. But that's max as a celebration, right? And that's been super beneficial. And that's only on Saturdays. We still watch movies at night, but that's a celebration. And then throughout the week, it's like, yeah, they do school and certain apps. And if you're paranoid, you can always monitor where your kids are at. I don't need to because they all work together and they actually rat each other out, which I tell them not to do. I don't want them to rat each other out. I want keep each other accountable, but don't tell me. But anyway, they have their own kind of community where they know
Hmm.
what the deal is, what they're supposed to be doing. And if they drift from that, they hold each other accountable. Because that's the thing too, is parents really shouldn't be alone with their phones. I mean, it sounds stupid, but we go to weird places on the internet too. When we're just late at night on your phone, how much are you being productive? Like between the hours of 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., if you're on your phone, you're not doing anything. You've probably that's contributing to your mental health or your spiritual health. Or you're wasting time. You're kind of zoning out, and there's so many other better things that you could be doing, right?
Hmm.
So doing things in public spaces, killer. It's such a great idea, and for your kids especially, they should never associate their their devices as a form of escaping from reality, but
Yeah.
rather connecting to a higher reality, which is, again, building projects. My kids have a YouTube channel. My other kid's learning how to do music production on his device because you can connect. Anyway,
Cool.
just that you associate it with growth and meaning and value rather than wasting time. But to be
Hmm.
honest, we have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like what you said about defining the relationship. Like, what do you
Mm,
want from this? And for people to think like that, like this,
yeah.
is this going to serve you? And what do you want from it? And for how long? I heard of some parents who refrain from using like a digital device to read books because then their kids can't see the difference. Like, is my parent, scrolling, or is my parent playing a
Uh,
game, or,
yeah.
or are they reading a book? And I feel like this is kind of a pity that, I
Sure.
mean, of course, it's great. Um, I think what they're doing is great, but it's not always easy. I mean, it's great to have Kindles, and it's just practical.
Yeah.
Um, but I do like I can really appreciate that, having a book, a physical book in your hand, the kids, like for young minds, that just makes really sense, um, and then they're more likely to copy you. But if they
Sure.
just see a phone in your hand,
Mm,
um, you know, you have to really explain, in detail, like, yeah, this is actually a book I'm reading, um, and I'm not just scrolling. But so I don't know if it has to be like such an extreme example. I mean, every child is different. But I did notice, sometimes I'll quickly do something on my phone, which is for work, or I do have Kindle on my phone. And I've noticed that, maybe one of my children then will ask for the phone when I have mine.
Sure.
And so so yeah, it's just something to think about, I think.
And it's fair enough. Like if you're on your phone and they say, I be on my phone? Why can't they? Right? If you just randomly pull out your phone, why can't they? What makes you any different than them? And
True.
so, yeah, when it is for work and that's another issue too, is that previous generations, when they weren't at work, they weren't at work. And now our work follows us wherever we go. We have to be careful. But think about that. A lot of parents don't want to have to justify themselves to their kids, right? Like, hey, what are you doing on your phone? You don't want accusation. But if you see it from a different lens and you every time you take out your phone in front of your kids, you're like, I'm going to do this now. I'm just going to go and write an email. I just remembered I need to tell this person something. That gives you accountability for why you're going on. And we should actually be doing this with ourselves anyway. We should be,
Hmm.
every time I'm about to pull out my phone, I'm just going to do this. And then you just do that. And then you put your phone away, because otherwise you got to have every intention to, oh yeah, I got to reach out to that person. But then you're on your phone for 30 minutes because you just get kind of shoved around by different algorithms. And we need accountability more than ever. Like you need, before you go into the swamp, to kind of take a deep breath and say, I'm going in, I'm going to come out. And then it needs to be transactional. Otherwise, you just end up losing every time, because they've found like this goes against our very nature as humans. Like the way that you scroll from down to up, it does something to our eyes. When our eyes move like that, we associate it with excitement. And so we're constantly just getting little hits of dopamine that just equates to, well, there's something else here. And you just keep on digging. You're digging, right? But nobody knows what they're looking for when they're scrolling. They're just scrolling. But what? And why isn't it that you, like if you're going through YouTube or even TikTok or Instagram, they all scroll the same way for psychological reasons. But if you think about it, after watching 10, 20 videos, why aren't you filled up? You're never going to be filled up, right? You're looking for something that you can't find there. So then what are you looking for? So I think it's fair enough that if we would expect our kids to have boundaries and if they need to go on their devices, because if I see my kid pulling out a device, I'm like, well, what are you doing? Like, this is not what we do. And they'll explain to me. And I would hope that they would do the same. Sometimes they do, but also sometimes they don't, because we're just adults and it's different. But I don't think it should be, to be honest. I think we
Hmm.
should all be equally accountable for our relationship with this thing. Because just because you're an adult, and yeah, you maybe you're checking your stocks or your crypto, but still, that could be a form of your addiction. It's like, do you need to be doing that right now? Is it good
Yeah.
for your mental health to constantly be checking your crypto, especially crypto, for God's sake, because it's all over the place, right? You're like having a great day and then you just check your bags, and then all of a sudden now you're just like, oh crap. And then now your mood has changed. Is that the best thing, right? Or to check an email, but it's for work. Yeah, but do you need that right now? You
Hmm.
right? Like to just
Yeah.
keep it in its place so that it knows its place. That you have like you're like disassociated. You pull the internet in when you need it and you push it out when you don't.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it never ends. It just never ends.
Yeah. It's so true because now with phones or different kinds of devices, it does become hard for many people to separate work and personal life or even just quality time or
Mhm.
relaxing time. So it is great if we can keep that contained, keep work even contained or
Yeah.
entertainment contained where it should belong. So yeah, I totally appreciate and that we should model also that, like explaining what we do. Because I ask my daughter all the time, she has a phone, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And yeah, so like we make it like always a, like she should always be able to explain what she is doing. And yeah, for sure, we should also be able to do that as parents. And I
Hmm.
think, yeah, also to keep our work very designated time if possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's another form of addiction is overworking, right?
Yeah.
So maybe 2 weeks ago, I was in a park with my kids and I saw this dad and his son. His son looked like he was 14, something like that. And the son was like trying to like push the father. And I was a little bit alarmed because I thought maybe they might be beating each other up. But it was actually the dad had his son's phone. And he was trying to look at what was in his son's phone. And his son was freaking out and he's trying to grab his
Oh.
phone. And it was playful, kind of, right? And the dad, I saw them later and the son grabbed his phone and he was kind of laughing and the dad was kind of laughing. But I could see that the undertone of that was actually the dad has no idea about this entire realm of his son's life, which for some
Mm.
kids is like 50-50. Their waking life is online and you don't know what's going on in your kid's online life. That means that you don't know 50% of your kid. And if your kid has 50% of their character, personality, thoughts, emotions hidden from you, right? So as kind of silly as it looked, and they were just kind of playing, it was also indicative of the fact that the son's urgency to get his phone back from his dad meant that there's plenty there that he didn't want his dad to see. And his
Mm.
dad also, in this playful exchange, wanted to know a certain aspect of his son. I know I'm really reading into some scenario here, but it's an age old thing where of course you want to know what your kids are up to. You care about them. And of course your kids are going to experiment with things and that they're ashamed of. And if they don't have a strong relationship with you, that they'll keep from you, right? But again, if you have healthy boundaries yourself, your kids should have accountability throughout their teens for sure. Just this idea that they're a teen and they should just have a phone, maybe. I don't really believe that. But if you believe that, okay, maybe. But not unfettered, unlimited access to all knowledge ever and the best and worst of humanity, from videos of people killing each other, beating each other up, to rape, to all sorts of stuff. You're just going to hand that to them without any filters, without any discussion. That's irresponsible as far as I'm concerned. But it's just not something we were doing it out of ignorance up until this point. And a lot of parents still, they say, well, maybe my children might watch porn, but maybe it's not that bad because they think porn is like a man and a woman having sex in front of a camera. They have no idea what it's morphing into, right?
Mm.
So there's so much violence in there. Pornhub recently was forced to take down 80%, something like that, of their content. So much of it was people being raped, recorded, and then they put that on Pornhub against their
Yeah.
consent. And they even tried to get it down, and Pornhub wouldn't take it down. And so that's what you're watching. How do you differentiate between somebody who's drugged up and whatever? And we can get into that. This is all pretty gory, but like it's hard to even talk about. And I'm sure it's hard for people to listen to that. Well, how much harder is it for you to just let your kids fall face first into that?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Without any. So this is why it's like our responsibility to not just give them all this stuff, because giving them a phone is also giving, roadblocks. Like my kids love, I went, where was I? I was just in another country and I was in many countries during the world tour and I brought up Roblox. I think I brought it up in Brazil and I was like, hey parents, you guys know Roblox? And they're like, oh yeah, Roblox. Because it's like it's like the YouTube of video games. But there's so much documentation of child predators in there
Mm.
doing all sorts of stuff. So like, so the analogy I used with them is I had a picture of a little kid, right? And it was like his back and he's about to walk into the jungle because we were in Bolivia that time, that when I gave that talk. And I was like, would you let your kids walk into the jungle by themselves? And they're like, no, because they actually have jungle there. So they have a frame of reference,
Relatable.
snakes, panthers, the like. And it's like, no, that's crazy. So I was like, would you let your kids go into this jungle? And it was a picture of the same kid, but it was a digital jungle of all the stuff that they'll be exposed to. And then they were like, oh, it's kind of like one of those, oh, it's so true. And I never thought about it in
Cringe.
that way. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, well, come to think of it, I shouldn't. So this is,
Right.
again, it's not a judgment. So much of us are just ignorant about what phones are, what the internet is, what we're giving to our kids. But you would never just throw your kid out into a situation where they're destined to fail and to suffer. No healthy parent would do that. But that's kind of what you're doing statistically with phones, because more kids than ever are experiencing depression, anxiety. They hate their bodies. They're just all sorts of negative things. And it's largely because of phones and social media. These tech companies are not doing anything responsibly. Their bottom line is profit. They will sacrifice the lives of our children. So it's on us. Governments seem to be incapable of doing pretty much anything at this point. We can't rely on them for much of anything other than spending money that we didn't give them. So we can't rely on the policymakers. We can't rely on big tech. We can't rely on our church, because our church, if whatever faith you are, nobody's really talking about this stuff in any great depth. It's on us. And that could sound like a burden, but it's our time to shine as parents. This is the chance to get to know your kids. The greatest thing about this whole porn scenario that we found ourselves in is that there's no wiggle room anymore. It's either we talk about it or we get consumed by it. And same with our kids. Either we take ownership of our kids by being the ones who are most responsible for them, or we just watch and slowly kind of feel like they're strangers in our house more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Because they don't even know, they're just becoming strangers to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That was lots of truth in one go. I just also wanted to mention Chris McKenna, because I really liked what he said. You kind of mentioned it, but he said, when you give your child a device, always just gift them the access of using a device that belongs to you as a parent. Because why would you, like you said, throw your child in that really dangerous jungle when you love them, because of all the dangers that they can be exposed to. So I really just like that, and just wanted to throw that out there for anyone who's kind of on the fence, that you can let your child use the device, but let yourself be the owner of it, and so you keep that kind of accountability that you can check at any time.
For sure.
And help them to be more in control.
Yeah, the idea of software like Covenant Eyes has been around for, I don't know, over a decade, And Covenant Eyes was designed by this guy who actually lost his family in a car crash, and he lost his wife and kids in a car crash, and the insurance money paid out millions of dollars, and he used all of that money to create this company, which is called Covenant Eyes, which in the beginning was just kind of like accountability software. Now they hired people who used to work for the CIA and all this to work on the algorithm. And essentially it's just that somebody, and it's for people of any age, to put it on their devices so that they know that they're never alone online. And actually, our ego wants us to be like, I don't need that. But we all do, actually. If we feel like let's say us, like our spouse is on the internet with us, there's certain websites we won't go to, right? And if you're a kid and you know your parents are going to know where you're going, because it takes random screenshots, and if it's pornographic, it'll make it fuzzy so that you don't have to see it, but it'll be clear that, and it'll give you alerts if somebody's going to dangerous websites. But it's just the idea of like, we shouldn't ever be alone. Being alone is a disease. Isolation is what causes addiction in the first place. But we isolate ourselves when we go online. And we think we're going to be okay because we're so distracted by all the shiny stuff, but we don't know that we've just walked into a very dangerous neighborhood, right? Like we used to have that video in one of our early kind of programs, is like, think about the internet like a society, and there's certain neighborhoods, right? There's like the financial district, entertainment district, and actually Wreck-It Ralph did a great job. Wreck-It Ralph Part 2 did a great job at making that metaphor come to life, that there's these different districts. But if you think about it, there's a lot of neighborhoods in this world that you shouldn't ever go to because it's trouble. Like in America right now, these neighborhoods are popping up in every city where they're just so bad, like just so insane. Like in Philadelphia, neighborhoods where you have to step over hundreds of needles because it's just drug addicts everywhere. Like you just don't go there unless you're like a drug addict or you're trying to save drug addicts. But anybody else, you don't bring your kids to walk through that. You know, there's crazy stuff out there. So same with the internet. And so you need to be accompanied by an adult. I really feel. And so that's why,
Yeah.
at the very least, public space for your
Yeah.
kids when they access the internet, and also there's filters on Android and Apple, naturally native, that you can
Yeah.
control what they have access to. Anything additional to that, yeah, there's software, there's free, cheap, and expensive software that you can use that mitigates their access to certain content.
Yeah.
And it's like, that just helps you be intentional. You think and talk to your kids. What do you want to use this thing for? This phone or this tablet? What do you want to use it for? Okay, so let's just have those apps alone. On all my kids' apps, they all have iPads because all of their apps are curated. And we talk about which apps are on there because that's the experience that they're going to get. And they don't wander around Safari. They don't wander around Google, these places. They go on there for specific reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. These boundaries are so important for us and for our kids.
For sure.
Yeah. What my husband, he loves to talk about having a higher ratio of creation and instead of consummation, because, we can consume and consume, but then at some point we just feel empty. I feel like at the time of Corona, there were also just so many webinars and so many, I don't know, online services. Everyone was like consuming and consuming. But at some point you have to create something because it's like you just get so full and you just need to let it out in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so like what we try to encourage our kids to do is like also, screens can be used for creation as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like you can create videos, you can create music, you can yeah, I don't know, create a podcast. Yeah, just that they think about that. And also especially like you said, like young kids, they actually are so creative that is in their nature. We were moving, we moved out of our house, and so we were living in a pretty much empty house for a week or two. And our youngest child, or not youngest, he used to be our youngest. We have a new
Got an
youngest,
upgrade.
he's 5, so he would find the most random things to play with and made things with them, and it was so cool to see his creativity out of like whatever we had in the house, like little tools, I don't even know what they're called. And yeah, like our kids are all creative, and so it's just great to let that shine. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
also
a muscle that, like, creativity is a muscle that needs to be exercised. Otherwise, you
yeah,
lose it.
right. And also, like you said, like I also like to talk to my kids about like, yeah, these little thumbnails, they're designed to pull you in. They create it like that because they want you to click on it, and then you're not in control anymore because you just wanted to watch this one thing about learning Spanish. But if you push all those other little things, you're not in control anymore. And so I just like, I mean, kids are smart. You can let them know about all these things. Of course, like with my 5-year-old, I know even though I tell him that, he needs a lot of help. He can't control himself. But the older ones, they can be a bit more in control. But still, like you said, always have a common space, be with other people when you're on a screen.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to a couple a few months ago, and they were complaining about how much screen time their kid had. They were like, he plays video games. This kid was playing video games like 5 hours a day. And they were like, oh, we don't like it. But, this is what he does. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, whose house is it? Like, is it his house or is it your house? This is parents have to stop feeling bad limiting their kids. You're helping them deal with life. That's our job, is to help them to get good at life, dealing with their emotions, doing stuff they don't want to do, aka chores or homework or whatever the case may be. But that's a part of life, is learning the discipline to do things you don't want to do, because you should, if you're well adjusted, you should be doing them out of your own free will, but also because you see the value. And a parent's job is to create the framework to allow kids to do things they don't necessarily want to do, but help them understand that it's valuable and get them to eventually take ownership over it. But there should never be a moment when a parent has a child, especially under the age of, I don't know, 13, 14, where they feel like, oh, I don't know what to do. My kid's totally in control of some aspect of our families. Like, that is completely the opposite, right? That's the reversal of dominion. You just got to assert yourself. Like, parents need to assert their authority as parents. Otherwise, you're not in control and you're not serving your kids at the highest level. Serving doesn't mean letting your kids do what they want. It means letting them, facilitating their greatness, facilitating their growth. And so, yeah, like the idea that, oh, I don't know what to do. My kid is on their device too much. Yeah, take it away. Take it away, right?
Yeah.
Let them experience. Again, video games aren't bad. 5 hours a day of video games, that's atrocious. That's like really, really, really bad for a young mind, because
Yeah.
there's so much life that they're avoiding. That creativity that you're talking about, friends, growth that happens outside of that. And so they're forming these escapism habits at an early age. It's going to be way harder for them to kick it later on. When people kind of dabble with video games, dabble with even bad things like pornography, much easier for them to kick it in their 20s and 30s. Way harder when that is their happy place.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the only place that you can go to when life is difficult. Then, oh man, it's going to be way harder to replace that with something else.
Yeah, sure.
So
Yeah.
parents, yeah, it's really important that you like assert your authority by like not just being a dictator, but by creating a plan and helping them understand why how much. You don't have to go like us, but like maybe an hour, like you said, 30 minutes to an hour a day, something like that. And only after they do homework, and like that, there's conditions, and that they have to fulfill the hard stuff first and then do gain the benefit. But there's no excuse for like having a kid that's out of control. That just means that you got to work on your parenting, right? Like, to really step up your game as the parent in the relationship. And for some
Yeah.
people, like, yeah, they feel bad, right? Maybe they're divorced and they feel really bad for their kid, but that doesn't fix anything.
Mm.
You doing things out of pity makes your kid more pitiful, because they're filled with your pity. Your fear, your anxiety is driving your parenting rather than doing what's best for your kid, which means sometimes having difficult conversations, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One parent asked me recently about her son being on the phone too long, and I get it, because I know, like, sometimes it just feels like maybe we're scared, okay, my child is just going to be angry at me,
Yeah.
or you know they won't love me, or maybe something like this. But like, which doesn't, it's not an excuse, of course not, but I do feel like it does come across so differently when, sometimes we can say it with a scolding heart or annoyed, like why are you on your phone so much, like,
Yeah.
it's not good for you. But when you say almost the same thing but with a loving heart, it's like, I really care about you, and I don't think this is good for you when you do it so long, and so I'm going to stop, I'm going to make a limit, because I don't want you to waste your life or waste your precious hours of the day. I
Mhm.
really 100% believe our kids feel the difference. And so it just, like, just for parents to be aware, like, when you speak from that loving heart and you invest in that connection with your child, that's going to also be in your favor when you have these tough conversations.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very important point. The idea that if you are always nagging, that's not a good energy, right? You shouldn't have to nag. Nagging is a reaction, right? And so again, this is about intentionality. And so it's about following a plan, creating a plan, following the plan. And it's a family plan of how we want to exist in terms of technology. And for every family, it's going to be a little bit different, and that's fine. But it should be according to your vision for who you want your family to be. And then kids, it's not a democracy. They shouldn't have equal say. Like, because if you let kids, let's say it's you and your spouse and you have three or more kids, they're going to outvote you every time. It's like, oh, should we have candy every day? Well, let's put it to a vote. The kids will be like, they're of course going to push that through the house. So it's not a democracy, but it's about, again, you don't want to mandate and you don't want to create a dictatorship. But when you have a plan and you explain why things are a certain way, like you shouldn't be on your phone too much because of this reason. And like, I do feel like, yes, maybe some games are fun, but we got to figure out how much is healthy. You can do some research if you want. You can study the best, statistics on how much is safe and healthy. And then you come up with a balance and then you stick to that plan. And then now it's just reminding each other and keeping each other accountable. Right.
Yes.
And even at a young age, as young as 2, 3, 4, 5, you don't need to explain as much when they're little kids. It's much more when they're younger. These are the rules. But as they get older, they start asking why, and they start pushing back. And I think it's a fair question. Some parents don't believe in explaining. There's definitely a lot of philosophies out there about child rearing that you shouldn't have to explain anything to your kids. I think it helps them to become more mature because the questions are good, right? That's from our school system that questions are bad because they're time consuming and you got to think, right? But from like a person to person, I think that if they ask, yeah, you should have a good reason why it's not a good idea to do some things. And again, forming a plan and then just keeping each other accountable keeps you away from nagging to your kids or yelling at them or from just reacting.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of concerning, I feel. Older kids, younger kids, they might have meltdowns when you decide to change the rules, but they are really flexible. And I think in the end, what they ultimately want is just to connect with us as parents. And so if we replace that screen time with almost anything, spending time with us parents, then I think they'll get on board with it eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I do when my kids are having a meltdown, like what I would do with my younger ones is I would just start reading a book, and in the beginning they wouldn't want to read a book, but they would eventually come and sit down and listen, like they would just give in. But so they might like protest, and say, I don't want to do that. But if you just start doing something and invite them, yeah, I think they'll enjoy it much more.
I agree. Yeah, and again, so the philosophy of high noon is not just getting rid of the bad things. It's creating a life that you don't want to escape from. So then it's also helping them to use their time better. If they're not playing video games, what else would they be doing? So I've been working really hard, not just to stop my kids from doing stupid things and wasting their time, but like this week we went to a different kind of like a Boy Scouts thing out here, and I introduced them to that. And then I took my other son to a music studio to introduce him to new opportunities there. And like I'm constantly working with them to find out ways to engage them in life, right? Because I don't want them searching the internet and trying to find all this stuff out for themselves. But I'll do some of this work for them. And then the idea is opening doors for them, the good doors, and helping them to choose to close certain other doors. And that is, I think part of our responsibility as parents is to help them understand right from wrong, good from bad, and what they want from what they don't want, and just helping them get the good stuff. And then it will be much less resistance. If they have a lot of friends, if they have fun hobbies, if they have an active imagination, they don't need phones as much. That's just a cop out. Same with us. Same with parents. When we have a fun life that we're enjoying, we don't need to run into our phones for entertainment. Same
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw today actually, I it was actually on Instagram, but I found a really good quote from Jonathan Haidt. He's a psychologist and author, and he said ultimately screens are real experience blockers. And I think it's true. I mean, of course, it is a tool. Screens can be tools, but they are ultimately, if we're using them too much, they are blocking us from real experiences, you know, like being live with people, with nature, with whatever. And so just something to think about, like how much of these real experiences, you know, that's why we're on earth, we're here to experience life. How much of that are we willing to lose, you know, with these screens or devices?
Sure. Yeah. I love it. I mean, it's the greatest question, one of the greatest questions of our time, because it's only going to become more alluring and addictive the more that it's customized by the second through AI. Like I've been already messing with Sora and what you can do with just videos, making your own videos, and how rewarding it is to make funny things happen just from an idea of like, I don't know, a chicken eating a chocolate bar on a bench, and it just, and it can talk and it, like, and that stuff is early stages. It's really, really clear that that's going to be the next iteration of Netflix, and it's going to be on demand, and you can create your own stories with minimal prompts and just really easy to escape. It's never been easier to escape. So when our kids are older and they can choose between life or escaping, we want our kids to choose life because they're going to be then the ones who create society, and everybody else is just going to be following along. And that's not what you'd want. You don't have kids to be like, I want you to grow up to be a great follower, to just obey what everybody else is doing, right? But you're inherently doing that if you turn them into a consumer, like you said. If you're just consuming content all the time, you become a slave to other people's opinions. And I know these are kind of strong words, but it's true. It's like we can see with echo chambers and the way that the internet is now working through algorithms is you just stop being a thoughtful, nuanced person, and you just become, just a product yourself. You become the product.
Right.
Right? What is on Instagram, let's say, or Facebook? You wonder what the product is. You are the actual product, because that's how they make their money. Is they say this many people come to our website. So for marketers, that's how they make their money, through marketing. But it has to be through recurring people, and that's how they make their money. So they're making money from you. That makes you the product, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to be the creators. That's why we're born. We're born as a part of creation so that we can create.
Exactly. Born from a creator to be creators. I think that's what God really wishes, is for us to really listen to our deepest desire in our heart. Like, what do I really want to create in this life? And find that. That's actually what I wish for each of my children, to find this calling. I mean, of course, I think we can have different kinds of callings throughout life, but for them to really find things that they're passionate to create in their lives. So, and yeah, the screens should just be tools and not distractions on that path.
Yep. Yeah, good luck out there. And that's why, if this is rattling you a bit, that's why School of Love exists, right? It's to help you do these things, like have these conversations with your kids, and to start creating more intentionality. It's not inherent. It's much easier for us to just get lost in this whole thing. But the moment you start becoming intentional and you start reclaiming your time, and you have a healthy relationship with technology, that enhances your life, enhances your kids' lives too. And then they can use these things to become geniuses in ways that we could never, because we weren't raised like this. But they are. But most kids are not given boundaries, so they're getting eaten.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. I think this was a great use of technology here. And yeah, everyone reach out to School of Love whenever you need a helping hand. And yeah, we'll see you again.
Peace.